The human exploration ship Aurora drifted silently into the new star system, its silver hull glinting in the light of 3 suns. The crew inside felt a mixture of excitement and tension. Humanity had expanded far, reaching systems once thought impossible to touch. But this mission was different. This was not about exploration alone. This was about diplomacy, about meeting a powerful alien empire that had only been spoken of in intercepted transmissions and distant reports. Commander. Ethan Reyes stood at the wide window of the command deck, his hands clasped behind his back. He had faced dangerous missions before, but nothing compared to the weight of this one. The Xyrath Empire was no ordinary civilization. They were old, proud, and powerful. Their fleet was larger than anything Earth had ever built, and their warriors were known across sectors for their strength. Humanity was young in comparison, fragile but determined. This meeting could decide if Earth survived in the galactic community, or if it would be crushed before it could rise. The voice of the ship's communication officer broke the silence. Commander, the Xyrath fleet is approaching. Multiple capital ships on intercept course. Their formation is intimidating. Ethan gave a small smile, though it held no humor. That's the point. Keep our shields lowered, no sudden moves. The crew obeyed. Tension thickened in the air as massive alien ships emerged from the darkness. Each vessel was shaped like a blade, black with glowing crimson lines running along its edges. They moved with perfect coordination, surrounding the Aurora like predators circling prey. On the screens, the details were terrifying. Weapon ports large enough to obliterate entire cities, armor that seemed to drink in the light. Message incoming, the officer said. Visual request from the Xyrath flagship. Ethan nodded. Put it through. The screen flickered, and the image of the Xyrath throne chamber filled the command deck. The chamber was vast, with towering stone-like pillars and a throne carved from something that looked alive, pulsing faintly with energy. Seated upon it was the alien queen herself. She was tall, regal, and commanding. Her skin shimmered faintly, as if made of silver and obsidian together. Her eyes glowed like molten gold, sharp and unyielding. The air around her seemed heavy, as though even the image carried her authority. She wore a crown of crystalline spines, and her voice when she spoke was low, rich, and filled with power. Humans, she said, drawing out the word as if tasting it. You stand before the throne of Queen Zelyara of the Xyrath Empire. Speak your purpose. The crew fell silent. Ethan stepped forward, his voice steady despite the pressure pressing on his chest. Your Majesty, I am Commander Ethan Reyes, of the United Earth Alliance. We come in peace, seeking dialogue and understanding. We wish for our peoples to meet not as enemies, but as allies. The Queen's eyes narrowed, and the chamber filled with murmurs from alien attendants standing at the sides. Some looked curious, others disgusted. For the Xyrath, humanity was still little more than a rumor. But before the Queen could answer, movement stirred beside her throne. A figure stepped forward, tall and graceful, her skin softer in glow than the Queen's, but with the same golden eyes. Her long hair shimmered like silver threads, and though her bearing was proud, there was warmth in her gaze. It was the princess. Ethan froze for a heartbeat. He had seen her once before, but never like this. He remembered the moment vividly. Weeks ago, during a scouting mission, his ship had received a distress call from a small craft. Against protocol, he had led the rescue himself. The craft had been failing, its systems collapsing, and inside was the princess trapped and alone. He hadn't known her identity at the time, only that someone's life was in danger. Without hesitation, he had pulled her from the wreckage, guiding her hand to his as he dragged her into safety. That moment, simple yet real, had left a connection neither of them could ignore. Now she stood in full royal attire, yet her expression softened when her eyes met his. And then, without fear or hesitation, she walked down the steps of the throne and stood at his side. The entire chamber gasped in disbelief. The Queen's gaze sharpened like a blade as she rose from her throne. Her voice thundered, shaking the very air. Why is my daughter holding your hand, human? The crew aboard the Aurora looked on in shock. Even the alien guards tightened their grips on their weapons. Ethan looked down, realizing that somewhere, between the princess's approach and his own instinct, their hands had found each other again. Her fingers were cool but steady against his. She had chosen to stand with him, here in the heart of her empire. Ethan could feel the weight of the Queen's glare pressing down on him like a storm. He knew one wrong word could doom not just him, but humanity's chance at survival. Slowly, carefully he raised his head and met the Queen's burning eyes. "Because," he said, his voice calm but firm, "I saved her life when others would have let her die. Because in that moment, there was no human or Zyrith. Only two lives crossing, paths. And because she chose to stand with me now, just as I once chose to reach out my hand to her." The chamber erupted in whispers, disbelief echoing across alien tongues. The Queen's expression remained unreadable, but her eyes never left his. The princess, still holding his hand, lifted her chin as if daring anyone to challenge her choice. For long moments, silence stretched heavy and unbroken, heavy, and Ethan's heart pounded, but he refused to look away. Finally, the Queen's lips curved, not in a smile, but in something closer to recognition of a challenge. "You dare speak of equality before my throne," she said softly, though her voice carried to every corner of the chamber. "You are bold, human. Perhaps too bold." Her eyes flicked to her daughter, then back to Ethan. "But boldness is not weakness. That I will learn for myself." The screen faded, ending the transmission, but the weight of her words lingered. On the command deck, the crew exhaled in relief and fear. They all knew what had just happened. In a single moment, humanity had been thrust into the heart of an empire's politics, its traditions, and its power. Ethan let go of the princess's hand at last, though the memory of her touch remained. He stared at the darkened screen, knowing this was only the beginning, because in the eyes of the alien queen, humanity had just been noticed, and the galaxy would never be the same. The command deck of the Aurora remained silent long after the screen had gone dark. Every crew member seemed frozen, their minds racing over what had just happened. The alien queen had seen her daughter stand beside a human and hold his hand. Worse, she had demanded an answer, and Commander Ethan Reyes had given one. Nobody knew if it had been the right answer, or if it would be the last thing humanity ever said to the Zyrith Empire. The comm officer's voice broke the stillness. "Commander, incoming transmission. It's short. They request that you and only you transport to their flagship immediately. No escort." Several officers turned toward Ethan, alarm flashing across their faces. To enter the alien flagship alone was almost the same as stepping into a lion's mouth. No one could guarantee his safety. Ethan's jaw tightened. He knew he had no real choice. "Prepare a shuttle," he ordered calmly. "Sir," his first officer said, lowering his voice, "this could be a trap. The Queen might be planning to test you, or worse. If you die, everything we've worked for ends here." Ethan looked at him, then at the crew. They were watching him, fear written across their faces, but also trust. "If this is the price for peace," he said, "then I'll pay it. We came here to make contact, not to hide behind walls." Minutes later, Ethan was aboard the small shuttle, descending into the heart of the Zyrith fleet. Through the window, he saw the alien flagship grow larger and larger, its vast structure blotting out the stars. The surface of the ship looked alive, as if it pulsed with hidden veins of crimson light. Docking clamps reached out like claws as the shuttle landed. The ramp lowered with a hiss, and Ethan stepped into a corridor guarded by towering alien soldiers. Their armor was black and jagged, and their golden eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. Not one of them spoke as they led him deeper inside. At last, they reached a chamber of colossal size. The throne room of the Queen was even more overwhelming in person. The pillars stretched high into darkness, carved with alien runes that glowed faintly. The Queen sat upon her living throne, her gaze sharp and piercing. Around her, attendants and nobles whispered, their voices filled with suspicion and curiosity, But Ethan's eyes were drawn not to the queen, but to the princess. She stood near the throne, her posture regal, yet her gaze softened when it fell upon him. A flicker of recognition passed between them, a silent reminder of the moment that had bound them together. The queen raised a hand and silence fell over the chamber. "Commander Ethan Reyes of humanity," she said, her voice cold and measured. "You claim to seek dialogue. Yet when you stand before me, my daughter, my heir chooses to stand beside you. Explain yourself. Did you use trickery? Did you bind her mind?" Gasps rippled through the attendants. To even suggest such a thing was a grave insult, but the queen's words carried weight. Ethan stepped forward, keeping his tone respectful but firm. "I did not bind her mind, nor did I trick her. I saved her when her vessel was failing. I reached out my hand, and she took it. That is all. Whatever choice she makes now is her own." The queen's golden eyes blazed. She studied her daughter, who did not flinch. Princess Selira lifted her chin and said clearly, "He speaks the truth. Without him, I would not stand here today. He risked himself when he had no reason to. That is why I trust him." The chamber erupted in noise, alien voices clashing. Some shouted that the human was dangerous, others that the princess had been deceived. The queen raised her hand again, silencing them. "Trust," the queen said slowly. "A fragile word. Among my people, trust is earned through strength. If this human claims my daughter's trust, then he must prove his worth." Her gaze fell upon Ethan like a weight. "You will face the trial of honor." The chamber grew still. The attendants whispered nervously. The trial of honor was a test few outsiders had ever faced, and fewer had survived. It was not only a trial of combat, but of resolve, wisdom, and spirit. For the Zyrith, it was the measure of one's soul. Ethan bowed his head slightly. "Then I will face it." The queen's lips curved faintly, though it was not quite a smile. "So be it. Tomorrow, you will enter the trial grounds. Fail, and you will not leave this ship alive. Succeed, and perhaps humanity may yet be seen as more than dust beneath our feet." The guards led him away, but before the doors closed, Ethan caught one last glimpse of the princess. Her eyes followed him, filled with worry and unspoken words. That night, Ethan was placed in a chamber, Spartan, but not cruel. He sat alone, thinking of the path ahead. He had faced battles before, but this was different. This was not only for his life, but for his people. If he failed, the queen would see humanity as weak, unworthy. A soft sound came from the shadows. He turned, startled, as Princess Selira stepped into the room. "You should not be here," he whispered. "And yet, I am," she replied. "The trial is harsh. It is not only about strength of body, but strength of mind. Many of my own people fear it. But I know you. You are different from them. You do not fight only with weapons. You fight with heart." Ethan looked at her uncertain. And what if that is not enough? Her golden eyes shone with quiet conviction. "Then you will still have shown them something they do not understand. That is enough to change everything." For a moment, silence lingered between them. Ethan felt the weight of her words settle into his chest. He had never asked for this, yet somehow it had become his burden. The next day, the trial began. Ethan stood at the center of a vast arena. The walls glowed with crimson light, and high above, nobles and soldiers filled the seats, their golden eyes fixed on him. At the highest point, the queen sat upon a throne, her daughter beside her. A booming voice announced the challenge. The human will face the trial of honor. He must endure the three paths, the path of strength, the path of wisdom, and the path of resolve. Only then shall he be judged. The first test began. From the shadows emerged a massive creature, armored in black scales, with claws like blades. The crowd roared as it charged. Ethan's pulse raced. He had no armor, no advanced weapons, only a simple staff. He knew he could not win by brute force. Instead, he moved with speed, dodging its strikes, letting it waste its energy. He struck, only when openings appeared, never trying to overpower it. but using its strength against itself. At last, with a final move, he wedged the staff into the ground, guiding the beast into its own momentum. It crashed, defeated, unable to rise. The crowd murmured in surprise. The second test followed. Ethan was led into a chamber filled with shifting patterns of light and sound. It was a puzzle, one that bent the senses and confused the mind. Many had gone mad within. Ethan closed his eyes, blocking out the chaos, and focused only on memory. He remembered the stars, the steady rhythm of his ship's engines, the sound of his crew's voices. He used those anchors to guide him through, step by step until he emerged on the other side. The final test was the path of resolve. He was shown visions, illusions designed to break him. Images of Earth burning, his crew dying, the princess turning away from him. His chest tightened with pain, but he remembered her words from the night before. Fight with heart. He walked through the illusions without faltering, refusing to surrender to fear. At last he returned to the arena floor. His body was weary, but his spirit unbroken. The crowd was silent, watching. The queen rose, her golden eyes fixed upon him. "You did not conquer through strength," she said. "You did not falter in confusion. You did not yield to despair. You are not as I expected, human. Perhaps—" She paused, her gaze shifting to her daughter. "Perhaps there is more to your kind than weakness." The chamber echoed with murmurs. Ethan met her gaze, breathing hard but steady. "We are not the strongest nor the oldest, but we endure. That is what makes us human." For a long moment, the queen said nothing. Then, slowly, she raised her hand. The crowd bowed in respect. "The human has endured the trial of honor," she declared. "His life is spared, and humanity will be judged further." Ethan looked up at the queen, then at the princess. She was smiling faintly, pride in her eyes. The trial was over, but he knew the real test had only just begun. The arena was still echoing with whispers when Ethan was escorted back to the guest quarters aboard the Xyrith flagship. His body felt heavy with exhaustion, but his mind was alert, replaying every step of the trial of honor. He had endured, but what had it truly earned him? The queen had spared his life, yes, but her words had been careful. Humanity was not yet accepted. They were still on trial in her eyes. When the guards finally left him alone, Ethan sat on the cold metallic bench inside the chamber. He ran a hand through his dark hair, breathing deeply. This was only the beginning. He knew the queen would not be satisfied with a single trial. She would test him again in ways far more dangerous. The door slid open quietly. He looked up and saw Princess Celera enter the chamber, her golden eyes soft with concern. She wore no crown here, no heavy robes, only a simple garment that made her seem less like royalty and more like someone who wanted to be seen as herself. "You survived," she said, her voice steady, but with a trace of relief. "I knew you would." Ethan gave a tired smile. "I wasn't sure myself. Your trials don't exactly make things easy." "They are not meant to be easy," she replied, stepping closer. "They are meant to break pretenders, but you did not break. You showed them something different, ain't they?" Studied her carefully. "Did your mother expect me to live?" Celera hesitated, then shook her head. "No, she thought you would fail. Most of her council wanted you to fail. They believe humans are weak, unworthy of alliance, unworthy even of notice. But you endured, and now they must question their own certainty." Her words carried a quiet weight. Ethan leaned back, his mind turning. He had gained something rare, a sliver of respect from those who would have dismissed him. But he also understood that respect could turn to danger if he was seen as a threat. Celera sat beside him, her presence calm. "You must be careful now. There are many who do not wish for peace. They will try to use you as proof that humans should never be trusted." Ethan glanced at her. "And you? Do you trust me?" Her lips curved faintly, almost a smile. "I trusted you from the moment you pulled me from the wreckage. I would not be here otherwise." Their eyes met, and for a moment, silence stretched between them. Something unspoken lingered in that silence, something fragile yet powerful. But before Ethan could speak again, the door hissed open. A guard entered, bowing his head. "Commander," the guard said curtly, "the Queen summons you. At once." Ethan rose, fatigue forgotten. He glanced at Selira, who gave him a quiet nod of encouragement. Then he followed the guard back through the winding corridors of the flagship until once again he stood before the throne of the alien queen. This time, the chamber was emptier. Only a few attendants and guards remained. The queen's golden eyes locked onto him as he entered, her presence filling the vast space. "You endured the trial of honor," she said, her voice carrying both strength and sharpness. "But do not mistake survival for victory. You have proven only that you can withstand. That is not enough." Ethan bowed slightly. "Then what would be enough, Your Majesty?" The Queen's gaze sharpened. "Trust between peoples is not built on survival alone. It is built on loyalty. And loyalty is tested in fire." She raised her hand, and a screen of shimmering light appeared before them. It showed an image of a Xerath outpost at the edge of their territory. Smoke and flames rose from its surface. Ships circled above it, firing upon the defenses. Ethan frowned. "What is this?" "Rebellion," the Queen said coldly. "Traitors among my people who believe the Empire should conquer rather than negotiate. They have taken the outpost and are calling for my daughter's blood." Her eyes glowed dangerously. "You will go there. You will stand beside my soldiers. You will fight with them. If you fall, you prove nothing. If you live and hold the line, then perhaps you prove that humanity is more than words." Ethan felt the weight of the command sink into him. This was no trial in an arena. This was war. "I will go," he said without hesitation. The Queen's lips curved faintly as though testing him. "We shall see if your courage endures the chaos of battle." The next hours blurred into motion. Ethan was escorted to a Xerath warship, where soldiers eyed him with cold curiosity. He was given armor, black and crimson, lighter than theirs but strong enough to protect him. He was handed a weapon, a staff that could channel energy into powerful strikes. The soldiers around him murmured in their alien tongue, some laughing quietly, others shaking their heads. A human among them was nothing but a liability in their eyes. Ethan ignored their doubt. He focused only on the mission. When the warship dropped out of faster-than-light travel, the battlefield loomed before them. The outpost was battered, its defenses failing. Enemy ships rained fire down, and the surface burned with explosions. The Xerath commander barked orders, and the soldiers prepared for deployment. Ethan stood among them, his grip tight on the weapon. His heart pounded, but his resolve was steady. This was no longer just about him. If he faltered here, the Queen would see humanity as weak. The drop began. The warship unleashed pods that streaked through the sky, slamming into the battlefield below. The doors burst open and the Xerath soldiers charged out, weapons blazing. Ethan followed, the heat of fire and smoke filling his lungs. The battlefield was chaos. Enemy rebels surged forward, their armor ragged but their fury strong. The clash of weapons echoed across the burning ground. Ethan fought beside the soldiers, dodging strikes and countering with precision. He could not match their raw strength, but he used speed, strategy, and resilience. At one moment, a rebel nearly cut down a soldier, but Ethan drove his staff into the rebel's chest, saving the warrior's life. The Xerath soldier stared at him in shock, then gave a curt nod before charging forward again. Hours passed in fire and blood. Ethan fought until his muscles screamed, until his vision blurred with exhaustion. Yet he did not yield. Every time he stumbled, he forced himself up again. Every time the rebels pressed harder, he stood his ground. At last, the battle began to turn. The rebels, worn down and broken, started to retreat. The Xerath soldiers roared in victory, their golden eyes blazing with pride. When the smoke cleared, Ethan stood among them, battered but alive, His armor was scorched, his hands trembling, but his spirit unbroken. Slowly, the soldiers began to look at him not with disdain, but with something closer to respect. The commander approached, his voice low but firm. "You fought with us. You saved my warriors. Perhaps you are not as weak as we believed." The warship returned to the flagship carrying the wounded and the victorious. When Ethan stepped once more into the Queen's chamber, she regarded him with unreadable eyes. "You fought in fire," she said. "You bled beside my soldiers. They speak of you with respect. That is not easily earned." Ethan met her gaze. "I did what anyone would do to protect those beside me." The Queen's golden eyes flicked to her daughter who stood nearby, pride shining in her face. Then she looked back at Ethan. "You have proven more than I expected. Yet understand this. Respect does not erase doubt. You are still human, and my people do not give trust lightly." Ethan bowed his head. "Then I will keep proving it until there is no doubt left." For the first time, a spark of something, perhaps admiration, perhaps challenge, glimmered in the Queen's eyes. The chamber fell silent, and Ethan knew this was far from over. The path ahead would only grow more dangerous. But he also knew something had changed. The Queen had seen him fight, had seen him endure, had seen him refuse to yield, and for the first time, humanity's place among the stars no longer seemed impossible. The halls of the Zyrith flagship were quieter after the battle at the outpost. Ethan could feel the shift in the air when he walked through the corridors. Soldiers who once glared at him with contempt now gave him silent nods. Some still looked at him with suspicion, but no longer with open hatred. He had fought beside them, bled with them, and in their culture, that meant something. Yet beneath the surface of that newfound respect, he could sense unease. The Queen had acknowledged his endurance, but she had not accepted humanity fully, and in the shadows he could feel something darker brewing. That evening he stood alone in his quarters, staring out at the stars through the wide glass window. The stars seemed peaceful, yet he knew the galaxy was far from it. His thoughts wandered to Earth, to the people depending on him. One wrong step and humanity would be remembered only as a foolish race that reached too far. The door opened softly, and Princess Celera entered. She moved with the grace of her people, but her face carried tension. "You did well at the outpost," she said quietly. "Even my mother's soldiers speak of your courage. That is no small victory." Ethan turned to her. "Victories don't last long in politics. Your mother still doubts me, and I can feel others plotting." Celera's golden eyes darkened. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You are right. There are those in the court who see you as a threat. They fear that if my mother begins to respect you, it will weaken their hold on power. Already, I have heard whispers." Ethan frowned. Whispers of what? Her voice dropped even lower. "Assassination. There are factions who would rather kill you and blame humanity than allow you to gain more influence. They may strike soon." For a moment, silence filled the room. Ethan's jaw tightened. He had expected resistance, but not so soon, not so direct. "Why tell me this?" he asked carefully. "Because I will not see you die for simply being true to yourself," she answered firmly. Her gaze softened slightly. "And because if they strike at you, they strike at me as well. My trust in you has already made me a target for their anger." Ethan studied her face, searching for doubt, but found none. She was risking much even by warning him. He nodded slowly. "Then we'll be ready." The following day, the Queen summoned her court. The chamber was filled with nobles, military leaders, and attendants. Ethan was called to stand at the center, before all of them. The Queen's presence dominated the throne, her eyes sharp as ever. "You have endured my tests," she said to him, her voice carrying through the chamber. "But there are those who question if you are worthy of standing among us at all. Today, you will be heard before my council." The nobles began to speak, their voices echoing. One, a tall male with jagged armor, sneered openly at Ethan. "This human is a danger, my queen. He manipulates your daughter. He poisons our soldiers with false loyalty. He cannot be trusted, another noble added. He fights with cunning, not strength. That is weakness dressed as cleverness. He should be sent back to his world before he brings ruin. Ethan listened, calm but tense. He knew this was more than debate. It was theater designed to sway the queen. And among the voices he could sense the growing hostility. Celira rose from her place beside the throne, her voice clear and unwavering. Enough. You speak of weakness, yet this human stood in battle while many of your own cowered. He saved lives when he had no reason to. If that is weakness, then perhaps you do not understand strength at all. Her words silenced the chamber for a heartbeat, but also fueled the noble's anger. Whispers hissed like serpents in the shadows. Suddenly, Ethan's instincts screamed. He felt movement behind him, a flicker of motion from the upper balconies. Without thinking, he turned and lunged. A blade of searing energy shot through the air, aimed directly at the princess. Ethan intercepted, throwing himself in front of her. The weapon struck his side, burning deep, and he staggered but did not fall. Guards erupted into motion, charging toward the attacker. Chaos filled the chamber. The assassin, cloaked in dark armor, leapt from the balcony, striking down a guard before being overwhelmed. His weapon clattered to the ground as he was dragged away. Ethan dropped to one knee, pain radiating through his body. The burn from the blade was harsh, his vision swimming, but his hands remained steady as he forced himself upright. He turned to Celira, who was staring at him with wide eyes, shock and fear mixing together. "You're safe," he said hoarsely, his breath uneven. She reached out, her hand trembling as it touched his arm. You shielded me." He gave a faint, pained smile. "Of course I did." The chamber stilled. Every noble, every soldier, every attendant had seen it. A human had thrown himself in front of death to protect the princess. He had not hesitated, not thought of his own survival. The queen rose from her throne, her golden eyes blazing. For a long moment, she said nothing, her gaze locked on Ethan. Then her voice thundered through the chamber. "Enough." The word silenced everything. Guards froze in place, nobles lowered their eyes. The queen stepped forward, her cloak flowing behind her like a storm. She stopped before Ethan, towering above him. "You would sacrifice your life for my daughter?" she demanded. Ethan, still trembling from pain, forced himself to meet her gaze. Without question. Her eyes burned into him, searching for falsehood, for weakness. She found none. Slowly, her expression shifted, the faintest hint of something softer passing through her features. "You are reckless," she said, her voice quieter but heavy with meaning. "Foolish, but perhaps not weak." She turned to the court, her voice rising again. "Let it be known. The human has shown courage beyond expectation. His loyalty cannot be denied. He will not be treated as an enemy, but as one who has stood in fire and endured." The nobles bowed, some reluctantly, others with quiet awe. The attempted assassination had backfired. Instead of weakening Ethan's position, it had elevated him. As the chamber emptied, Celira remained by his side, helping him walk. He leaned on her lightly, his strength fading from the wound. "You nearly died," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Why would you do that?" He looked at her, his expression tired but firm. "Because you're worth protecting. Because peace is worth protecting." Her golden eyes softened, and she said nothing more, guiding him gently toward his chamber. Later, when the healers tended to him, Ethan lay back, his mind heavy with exhaustion. He knew the attempt on his life was not the last. The factions would not stop until they destroyed him, or until the queen declared fully in his favor. But he also knew something had shifted. The queen had seen his resolve with her own eyes. As he drifted into uneasy sleep, one thought burned in his mind. He had come here as an envoy. Now, whether he liked it or not, he had become something more, a symbol. And symbols, he knew, carried the weight of entire worlds. Ethan lay in the medical chamber of the Xyrith flagship, his body weak from the wound he had taken. The energy blade had burned deep, and though the healers had done their work, pain lingered like fire under his skin. He stared at the ceiling, thoughts heavy. He had faced death before, but something about this time was different. He had not fought to defend his world or even his own life. He had stood in the way for Celira, and she had not left his side. Even now, as the healers left the chamber, she sat near him, her golden eyes fixed on his face. She had been silent for hours, watching over him. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet. "You changed something today. My mother may not admit it, but I saw her eyes. She does not see you as weak anymore." Ethan turned his head slightly toward her. "Respect is fragile. It can vanish. The moment I fail." Her expression hardened. "Then don't fail." Despite the pain, he gave a faint laugh. "You make it sound so simple." "It is simple," she said firmly. "You only need to be what you already are. A man who does not turn away even when the fire is at his throat." He looked at her a long moment, then closed his eyes. "I'll try." 2 days later, the queen summoned him again. The council chamber was full, the noble's eyes sharp as ever. But this time, there was less contempt, more caution. They had seen his sacrifice. They had seen him bleed for the princess. The queen's gaze locked on him as he entered, steady and cold. "You have proven you can endure pain. You have proven loyalty, even recklessness. But words of alliance are not forged only on bravery. They are forged in unity. You say your people wish to stand with us. Then you must show me not only your courage, but your ability to bind others to it." Ethan stood straight, his body still, aching. "And how do I prove that?" The queen lifted her hand. A hollow display lit up, showing a massive asteroid field near Xerith territory. Hidden among the rocks were clusters of hostile ships, an enemy raiding fleet. "They prepare to strike. They will target both our worlds if left unchecked. You will command a joint force, Xerith and human. If you can unite them to victory, you will have my answer. Fail, and you will prove that humans bring only ruin." The chamber filled with murmurs. A human commanding Xerith warriors? Many looked, outraged, others curious. Ethan's heart pounded, but he nodded. "I'll do it." Celira stepped forward, surprising many. "Then I will fight at his side. If you doubt him, then let me be your witness." The queen's eyes narrowed, but she said nothing more. She dismissed the council, leaving Ethan and Celira standing together in silence. That night, in the hangar, Ethan looked over the mixed group of fighters, humans in their sleek but smaller ships, Xerith soldiers in towering armor, their war machines gleaming. They did not trust each other. They stood apart, silent, cold. He could feel the distance between them like a wall. He stepped forward, his voice rising. "I know none of you want me here. Some of you would rather see me dead. I don't blame you. I'm an outsider, a stranger. But the enemy we face doesn't care if you're human or Xerith. They'll burn your homes and mine. They'll kill your families and mine. Out there, we either fight together or we die alone." His words echoed through the hangar. Some Xerith sneered, but others listened, their eyes narrowing in thought. A few humans raised their chins with pride. Slowly, the wall between them cracked. When the fleet launched, the stars filled with war. The enemy ships burst from the asteroid field. Sleek and deadly, they outnumbered Ethan's fleet, but he had something they did not. A plan built on trust. "Xerith warriors," he said over comms. "Hold the center. Your armor can take the brunt of their first strike. Humans, weave through the gaps and cut their engines. Don't fight for glory, fight for each other." The battle roared. Explosions lit up the void. Xerith battleships clashed with enemy cruisers while human fighters darted in and out, striking where the enemy was weakest. For the first time, they moved as one, their strengths covering each other's weaknesses. Ethan's ship shuddered as enemy fire grazed it. His hands gripped the controls tightly, his mind sharp. He directed squadrons with calm precision, calling out maneuvers, urging them on. Celira's voice cut through the chaos over comms. "They're breaking formation. The enemy commander is pushing toward the center." "I see it." Ethan replied. His eyes locked on the largest ship, a massive destroyer moving to split their forces. If that ship breaks through, it's over, he thought fast. Xyrith, form a wall. Humans, follow me. We'll strike the destroyer's weak point together. The comms filled with acknowledgement, though tense. Xyrith captains moved into place, their ships forming a shield line. Ethan led the human fighters straight into the fire, weaving through deadly beams of energy. The destroyer loomed ahead, its cannons charging. Now! Ethan shouted. The humans fired as one, targeting the destroyer's exposed flank. Explosions rippled across its hull. Xyrith warships added their firepower, tearing through the gaps. The destroyer shuddered, then erupted in flame, breaking apart in the void. A cheer rose over the comms, human and Xyrith voices together. The enemy fleet, leaderless, began to scatter. Ethan pressed the attack, refusing to let them regroup. Within the hour, the battlefield was silent, wreckage drifting among the stars. The fleet returned in triumph. When they landed, Xyrith soldiers, who once spat at the humans, now clasped their forearms in respect. Humans smiled, exhausted but proud. A bond had been forged in fire. In the grand chamber, the queen awaited them. Ethan stood before her once more, weary but unbowed. Celera stood at his side, her eyes bright with pride. The queen's gaze swept over him. You led my warriors. You united them with your own. Against greater numbers, you did not falter. You proved that your kind can fight not only with strength but with heart. Ethan bowed his head slightly. Not just my kind. Ours. Together. The queen studied him a long moment. Then, for the first time, her stern face softened. Perhaps humanity is not so fragile after all. She turned to the chamber, her voice ringing out. Let it be known, humanity is recognized. They will stand as allies of the Xyrith. Their courage has been proven, their worth undeniable. The chamber thundered with voices. Some cheered, others grumbled, but none dared challenge the queen's decree. As the court dispersed, the queen stepped closer to Ethan. Her golden eyes still burned with power, but there was a trace of something new, respect. You are reckless, human, and foolish, but you are also brave. I see now why my daughter holds your hand. Ethan met her gaze, steady. Because sometimes, one hand can carry the weight of two worlds. The queen's lips curved, almost like a smile. She turned and left, her cloak sweeping behind her. Celera looked at Ethan, her eyes shining. You did it. You changed everything. He shook his head. We did it. All of us. She stepped closer, her hand finding his once more. He did not pull away. Together they stood in the great hall, two figures from different worlds, yet united by the fire they had endured. Outside the flagship's windows, the stars stretched, endlessly, full of danger, full of promise. And for the first time, Ethan felt that humanity had found its place among them, not as the weakest, not as the forgotten, but as equals. The story of a single man had become the story of two worlds, and it was only the beginning.